history, real scholarship on history. I'd like to do some more of those scholarship areas. I like the point of view ones, which are people, so these are different categories. But mainly, I'd like to see that it really, we solicit from the dance community, from the European community, anybody who's doing about collaborations, anybody who's doing interesting work and try to get that journal to that next level. So partly it means casting a wider net.
And the history, I mean, there's so many aspects to what we do that deserve a scholarly look.
Yeah.
And I think it's
And each one you can sort of push that in, which means also then making the really the call broader, but then starting to use the database of departments to announce the journal and sell it more broadly to, the idea is obviously you sell it to libraries and you do that whole thing. And I think we could move into that without killing ourselves. And I would like to encourage people in the guild, because that was what we did before, was to encourage people in the guild to write. I mean, I was listening to people that I was just thinking yesterday, God, there's a lot of experience in this room. Because I was listening to other people going, yeah, I want to hear what more he has to say. I want to hear what more she has to say. That I could get that from out. And I've always wanted people to write. Because, and maybe I don't know how many of you actually read the journal because it was sort of dense.
It's really great.
Well, I was interested in it when I was, dealing with it myself. I was going, this is interesting. These are really, you've done work with, him on his article, and it was a really deep article. And really a lot to, understand the concepts and anything. So there was, at that level. I'd like to get feedback about ideas that you'd like to see happen.
Cool. What kind of grants does the guild get? Do you guys get grants?
No.
We've got grants only to do content composers.
Really? I think that the journal is a educational, outreach, non-profit, institutional thing. Like, we can get grants.
Are you talking about in a particular university or from where?
I can tell you something.
Yeah.
I can tell you that a little bit. I see several different models for developing this. Actually, before I say anything, I want to publicly thank Bill and John for doing what I did. And also, my personal testimonial of gratitude. You should know how significant it can be. Bill really, by pushing me to write, he pushed me into the whole world that I've been in for the last year of really kind of entered the arena of academic scholarship. And Bill pushing me to write this had something to do with it. And, I feel we are not necessarily all positioned for an outlook on that world. Our jobs don't require it of us. Most of us are not trained in that area, in that scholarship, and don't work in that arena. So Bill really did, you guys both did really push it to a new place. I thought you did it beautifully. From very little bit of the horizon that I can see of journals that are supported, that are, have a more regular readership and have more people contributing to it, there are two different models. One is supported by grants, and I think Contact Quarterly is a good model. The way that Nancy Stark Smith supported Contact Quarterly for all those decades of its development was through grants from the New York State Council for the Arts. I think that was probably their main supporter. I think they got some money from the state of Vermont as well. They had a nonprofit, Contact Collaborations, and very little money came through, but slowly enough money so that they could hire one staff person. And now it's an office of like 5 or 6 people, and it's been around for 30 years. So that is a viable model, and there are people who will give you money for it. Another model I think we should consider, and my gut says it's a little bit beyond us, but it's really worth talking about, is to say, as Bill does, this is very, very rich material. It can draw a variety of interesting topics, and there's readership for it beyond beyond our circle, and that it's time for an academic publisher to have a journal that shares many of these concerns. There isn't really a music and dance journal. I think there may be one or two in various states of sophistication, but I'm at the point where, because of the stuff I'm writing, I have had opportunities for meetings, right, that offers from publishers or editors of, like at Oxford and things like that, to come talk to me about what you're doing. And it would be very easy to say, would you consider, developing a journal with the Guild? I think it could be appropriate to ask, like, Routledge, I don't know how to pronounce it, and a few different publishers, whether or not they think a journal like this would have wide interest, and whether we could, not give it to them and have them do it, but partner in some sense with them. I don't really know what that means because I don't know about publishing, but it seems to me that when journals start, there are a group of people who make it happen, and I don't think they just evaporate when they get relationships with these presses. It's usually centered in an institution, it's usually centered in people who care about it. So I think that that's worth exploring if I would.
There's one issue with that. There's one issue with that is just sort of the level of writing and where that wants to be.
Well, that was my next
Okay.
question, because many journals are jury where you have
Absolutely.
a team of people who screen and decide, make decisions on what is going to be published and what is not going to be published.
But
I
this
guess we do want to voice that. It wouldn't make sense to do it unless we were, the jury process suited what we were wanting.
Right, because articles like the whole section about, how we use instruments in the dance class. That's, in the last journal. Very interesting, good information. And whether or not it, would pass that sort of.
Well, it was interesting,
Exactly.
because just so you know the process, several of us agreed, and there were articles that we didn't sound appropriate at the level, and then we talked about the tone, because I said these are, and I wrestled with that a lot and talked about it, and so all those other ones have that personal tone in the section on the electronic instruments. So there was several different tones, and we just said, okay, it's appropriate that those have those kind of tone, and yours has a very different, that section on had a different tone. So there was quite a bit of that actually going on with this journal.
And I rewrote, I have to say that my own personal experiences, I sent him a copy, he sent something back, he make some comments, and then I'd send him another copy.
Everybody wrote it a number of times.
I haven't had that experience for, decades, where I wrote something and got that kind of feedback, and it was a pleasure. I don't feel like I'm very good at it, but it's something I would like to do more of.
So it's just that it's not that far away from doing that,
That's
And I think this is worth pursuing, for sure. To see.
And just make a comment, one of my favorite articles was Larry's about his collaborative experiences with Bella Lewinsky. And I think each one of you has had collaborative experiences that are very interesting and unique and well worth documenting, and nobody else is doing this. So it's a story worth telling.
And no one's even talking about, theory of collaboration, at least from our point of view.
Right, well, especially now that you're getting into these electronic ways of doing things. This is a whole new field that nobody else would understand and know about.
So let me sort of cut this off. And actually move it into this discussion that I want to have about these bylaws. Because according to our bylaws, we're supposed to have committees. And one of the committees is the journal committee.
Yeah.
So, should we keep the journal committee?
Sure.
I moved that we keep the journal committee in the bylaws. All in favor? Yeah, okay, good. So, let's now figure out who the members of the journal committee should be.
this year was, Suzanne and myself and the president that made a lot of sense, I'd like to see more people get involved in that way, who are passionate about it. I know, I think that would be great.
So Bill, I nominate Bill Moll for chair of the Journal Committee.
I second the nomination.
Everyone, let's just skip the all in favor, if anyone's opposed. They can just say, no way. Okay, who else would like to be on the Journal? Suzanne, do you want to be on the Journal?
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Okay, so that's 4, that's plenty. We have Suzanne, Bill, and
And then the president has to sort of be there, because that's, I'll back and forth on that.
I nominate that.
why do I have to be on?
Well, the president should be like something about that,
Actually, me, files the president.
I'm on all of them.
Official member of representatives.
Okay, so there you go. You don't have to elect me. You don't have to elect me. I'm on it already.
We're at the bottom,
They're in my computer.
but they're not somewhere on our webpage.
No, because they just got unearthed. So, the Journal Committee, Bill Moll, Suzanne Austin, Andy Borchardt, Michael Kirkpatrick. Sounds good?
No, I'd like to hear more ideas for.
Okay, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Well, I think one of the distinctions that I'll be about is that some of the one or two is, does the journal serve the field or does it serve the field? And if it serves the field, what is the field? And serving the field assumes that we're going to be able to solicit work from outside the guild. And that for it to be of value to people outside the guild, it has to have a certain level of academic privilege anyway. So I guess it's a question of ambition and how we go about making this journal something.
Who do you envision outside
Musicologists who work in the ballet.
and dance?
That's one example.
And dance teachers?
Musicologists working in many fields. There are musicologists
Oh, yeah.
working with music and dance.
I have a friend at the UCLA musicology faculty who's based theory about 20th century music is that dance had everything to do with the 20th century.
Developed the
Composition, whether it's for dance or not, was involved, and she is a brilliant writer. She publishes in AMS and all those journals, and so I would want something like that to contribute.
Yeah.
And I went to a conference in London 2 years ago called Sound Moves.
Yeah.
It was all about.
Yeah.
And it was kind of amazing because there was a room filled with people from, I don't know, all over, and they were all these music historians, and they were patting themselves on the back for how clever they were for thinking about the idea of music and dance relationship. Like, aren't we so clever? And I raised my hand and said,
Can I say something about that?
yeah.
Himanshu Nagaratan sent along a DVD that I want a bunch of us to take a look at. It was put out by the American Composers Forum, promoting a program for a unique program that nobody else had ever thought of, called Music in Motion, where you actually put a choreographer with a composer. Yeah, and I have that, and Himanshu really wants us to take a look at it.
But that's certainly another example of composers is our audience that we also want to.
But this is the American Composers Forum that thinks they have
Right.
a unique line on
They're not really, I don't think that that's very, I got one in this race, and I don't think that the composers forum is very good. Like Chicago's secret from them. But then, I don't think that they're great more persons.
Yeah.
But you got like the
I'd
brands.
say something a little bit more encouraging, which is that if you look at the, I think it's the winter or spring issue of the Opera Quarterly of all things, which
They did something.
have really rethought of themselves. They're quite sophisticated articles about music dance relationships. And in fact, there is a new field emerging in the academy called Choreo Musicology, which is the musicology of dance music relationships. And it's really starting to run. So I think we're at the perfect moment to say we have something to give. I think there are academics who would want to publish in this, and that our experiences are very unique and can be very valuable.
But what we're saying too is just that we have something to give, but we are taking in stuff from all, please give us stuff that.
Well, some of the ways we raise our profile is to identify a writer and invite them to contribute, and that will help raise the profile of the writer. And I also think that, going along with our earlier discussion, most journals, if not all, at this point, exist on the web as well as in print. And so we're going to have to think about that and developing an archive of material. But I think it's very important that the jury, that we blind jury, that we follow a model. We pick a journal, Quarterly, as an example, and follow a model. Look at, well, how do they do it? How do they maintain their respectability and integrity?
There is going to be an academic journal called Choreo Musicology. It's only a matter of, I don't know that it's happening now, but it's going to happen. Do we want to be that? Do we want to get there first? And definitely.
Right, in the next time we have conference,
Yeah.
Right, that's exactly right.
yeah, we can work. Help enable us to have a
My sister is a translation tutor, and I can't tell you how many evenings I've spent talking to her about how I feel what I do is a type of translation. And I think that I would love to understand more about translation.
Yeah, that's
because
great.
artists.
If we get a grant to give stipends to writers, we could, through the guild members, if we're going to commission people outside the guild, like if you have somebody who you think is really valuable, you write to somebody that's on the board of the thing, and then they arrange to commission an article from her based on the set of blah, blah, blah. And the rest don't pay all the others.
Yes.
I'm not sure though if this material is basically written for commission or for profit. I think there might
No, but it might be a way to get people to write and to edit and do revisions that are, that don't have like another, if you wanted to get more interesting stuff in.
that are not in
Yeah, it's volunteer, it's like, that's
But
volunteer.
then once we get to this level, we have to think about selling.
I don't
Yeah.
know that that's the most critical part of the model. I think connecting ourselves to a community scholarship would be the critical
The
question.
only way you get the music theory spectrum is by joining the society for music theory. So that we already have that model set up. You get the journal. And you subscribe to journals by joining the society.
So that means,
But I went to their conference last year in LA. It was phenomenal. I mean, it's absolutely impressive.
I'm sorry, which conference?
It was a joint conference of the Society for Music Theory and the American Musicological Association.
Every other year.
Every other year they meet together, and then every other year they meet apart. And we love it. Absolutely.
yeah, Michael.
I just got one question here, just because I don't know. That's the reason I'm asking. We're talking about the stipends for writers. In other fields, isn't it considered market prestige to get your stuff published?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
There are no stipends in other fields.
in a review journal.
Right, they might pay for your, like scientific journals with all the formulas and such, they might pay. In fact, I think you have to pay pages. Actually, you get a grant to pay to get your thing in the scientific.
There's an external motivator there, but I think the other thing too is that you could maybe temporarily encourage high profile, whatever, people to write for anything else, so that they're, well, get them into the journal, and that will spread things around, so, so there's actually something about dance musicology kind of stuff here, as opposed to, well, here's how you use handguns, or here's how you survive a career in dance, or whatever. I think that does pull into like hard academia in a little bit stronger way, more forceful way, and would bring the whole whatever.
Well, if we do,
The red
we do, when we get the guide and get the website built, maybe like more informational, anecdotal things, be like the web journal sort of thing, and then we could make the journal separate that.
Those are important in practice.
Yeah.
Being there in the studio or with or
Yes.
collaborating is really critical. It's
Yeah.
what we breathe and it's what we eat. It doesn't smell academic. It's,
Right.
I administered the web and computer and submission process for IADS, which is the International Association of Advanced Medicine and Science. And it's very like this in that it's an allied, but and they do a submission process through Oxford Abstracts where people submit an abstract and then it goes through a review process. And I do all the computer part of that. And it's all, I do it in Queen and it's all in England where all this happens. And this is very possible to do.
Do you want to be on the journal?
We've been,
Yeah, I'm sorry, Pumpkin. I want to report also that Jamal's fine, but he wanted to ice his nose. And he's going to call later and I just want to come up or something.
So, we've been talking about the journal.
Right.
And we have a journal committee, and
Well, I'd love to be on the committee. I would also say that, you know, the tenor of scholarship at this moment is it's a good time to jump in for us because of dance studies.
That was set earlier.
Yeah, okay, sorry. But I think it's really important, but it's also important that we decide, we have a sort of steering committee like this journal committee so that it doesn't just become us writing over to each other,
Right.
which is fabulous and beautiful. But it's different than, say, proceedings would be, which I also would suggest, that we can publish proceedings from this group. You know, it would be, for instance, Tigger's handout could be published as part of the proceedings. Jamal has a handout that he wanted to publish. So, if I gave a paper, you know, that I could, and things could be vetted that way, we could share. But that's a proceedings thing, it's different than.
Yeah, because
proceedings tend to be on webs,
Right.
I really felt strongly that after the course of doing it, that there's those formal, practical, sort of non-academic ones that were really important for us. And it's also important to move in the academic direction. And we need to find ways to how to kind of things.
I don't think that they're at odds with each other. I feel very confident, based on my really limited experience, taking what we have now to a publisher and saying this represents, this represents many different kinds of activities that all do circle some central concerns. And I think that a lot of journals are very lively out there. There are a lot of different approaches to fields, and really just
And I know one of the things, when I go to NGO conferences, the teachers always come up to me, I've got any more questions, how do I work with them?
Yeah.
And things like this last journal article would have been really helpful to them in that regard. And we could, if we wanted, we could have a featured writer, which might be one of these, or someone with that academic style, and then these other types of articles as part of it, I think it would still be a viable publication.
So just because we're going to chance it face-to-face, sometime later.
Yeah, we need to shoot this on. And also, I might suggest that when committees like the journal committee meets, we can also have that be a section of the website so we can read what you guys talk about.
Okay.
And I would say it's an exactly appropriate one to say that, I think one of the things that we need to do as a guild
Just to, it'll just, whoever scheduled that 9 o'clock start time is such an asshole. Yeah. I think too, it's warm enough in here tonight. Motion, make a motion to make sure to heat on. Because you turn heat up, just turn those off buttons. Very heated on. At one point, we tried to survey the state of dance musician, whatever. And Suzanne, you talked about where the status of that survey is.
Okay,
And
That's
it's
just
but what
I just want to say that the stuff that I got, when my job was in jeopardy, my boss said to the board of directors that live music is not essential for the training of the dancer. I would like to publish those letters that I got from Alan and from John and from, who else? There were 4 letters that Larry sent me to. And Suzanne, I think you did. Did I? Oh, they were fabulous, you guys. I mean, just to hear the kinds of clear thinking and rationalization that was used for the value of live musicianship in the dance studio was phenomenal.
What I'm talking about isn't simply an amalgam of the information about how people do it, but what we think should be done. And for us to figure out which places, like this place, which I think from all of the people who are working here is to make a fairly good role model for Big Ten type schools. What kind of answer there is to the problem of standard? Yes, thank you. For us, and then also figure one out for a place that, for example, Claudia and I were Denison University, which has this many hours of this many students, and then figure it out for high school and the high school of performing arts. And so to figure out, what we really think. I think we probably come to some consensus about that. So we some minimum consensus about that, and then compare it to the data that you're talking about.
So that could have,
And I've been through enough, I think, all of you have to, but I've been through enough of those NASD things where they want to come and talk to musicians and hear what we think. But isn't Susan just a full time? No. Oh, God.
That's why we
You're
know
really
about
that
that.
much. Well, see, that's a perfect.
So, this is all good, so where should we take this as an action item?
you need another committee. That's
Well, may I intercede for a second? I think one issue is that we have a more of a pretty diverse constituency that may or may not be, I don't know what to say this. A bulleted kind of list of standards is difficult when we talk about all the possible permutations of what people's needs might be. So one thing that we need to do for sure is inject ourselves into the administration of dance music, whatever that is. Besides being the music directors, we have to talk to our administrators in a way that makes sense, whether that be a performing arts kind of thing or a studio, for instance. So all of these levels take a slightly different approach, but they do take all of our collective intelligences to speak rationally and to be persuasive without screaming.
Right, yes, absolutely.
Which is a delicate matter.
Right.
Many of us speak academies fairly well, but there are other versions of that lingo that need to be developed. And just screaming in the corner, we have no right music is not a very effective way. But the Bible's letters work out nicely because they were spelled out in a very rational. I mean, you said it. I didn't see it, of course, but.
Chris, the one thing I slightly disagree with you about is I agree with you all about this music stuff, but I don't think that the way that dance is studied in institutions and even in studios, I mean, I think that breaks down to a fairly limited number of categories. You don't have to address each individual of your student population, 4,200 or 4,400, blah, blah. I mean,
well, let's look at it in a slightly different way. For instance, the emancipation of dance departments from physical education.
Yeah, there you go.
That made people had to scramble in order to find a way to be a dance department over here. And in many cases, we as musicians paid the price because we were staff. Again, I'm not sure that for most departments, rationalizing a faculty dance, I'm talking academy now. Most departments don't necessarily want to invest in a faculty dance musician.
Most of them.
What I standard that says you must have a faculty dance musician, but that you must honor a dance musician in that
But how about
capacity
we give them-
as a professional.
But how about we give them an alternative? If you don't hire, if the faculty thing isn't available, and I think that because of the growth of dance, that it's becoming less and less available, then what you should have are two, full-time staff people who are doing blah, 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 that the faculty person did. And then even a role model for how to do that here.
Well, we have two high-level administrators who are.
Yes, I know.
I mean, and I would point to them as.
I'm sort of encourage comments.
Yeah.
It has to be priorities. It was an easy thing for me to address when I said I became chair. First thing I did was ask Norman to survey what everybody was getting paid in Orange County. And there are a lot of schools and a lot of different valley programs. Because I could have just acted willfully and changed it. And then I have to justify it to the faculty. But when I was able to say, look, we have to address parity here. We're not paying as much as almost any other school in the area. And then we keep musicians only because our classes are more interesting. That's not going to last forever. So from the smallest point is, the administrator has to believe in this, and the best arguments are usually to point to competitors and say, this is what's going on at these institutions. I was able to get Norman's position full-time by just citing Arizona State, just by saying,
Or to point to someone like NASD.
Departments will determine a faculty position based on curriculum that needs to be offered. So the curriculum, if they want to have a lot of music in the curriculum, they have to have a professor.
There you go. That's
on the line, but that's not our purview to tell dance departments what their curriculum.
Right, have to have.
Right, and so Chris's
recommendation.
Actually, I don't know that that's true, because NASD recommendations are curricular recommendations. And it seems to me, I forget who was talking yesterday, it might be Bishop, about the fact that dance studies, that dance departments have to consider so much more curricularly than they did several decades ago. And we are fighting for a place at the curricular table. So, I think that, should we really be chewing up the details right now? I think this needs.
That's why I wanted to see what sort of action item we can get out of this.
Sorry,
No problem. Should we?
So how are we?
I'm like Peter Shickley.
Go ahead. May I finish my thought, please? That we can't really come up with a formula for that, but I think we might want to just start addressing cost of living, et cetera, as a basis and go from use the ACDFAs, which define regions of the country, survey those musicians during the conferences and festivals. Just this is what's happening in this part of the United States. This is what's happening in this part of the United States. I felt that Orange County being the most expensive places in the United States to live, and paying $11 an hour just to make.
I collect all that data from New York City because I'm always arguing for musicians at my school. It's 30.
And we start from a place of having enough information to start making some observations out of some grounding realities.
Hence, if I could butt in, I need to finish this report document on Michael's dance as a survey.
And why I mention this is because in my own personal experience, I've worked in so many different departments of different configurations, different sizes and shapes, and places that a lot of you have worked in. And I feel like I kind of have a picture in my head about, well, this one needed that kind of, and this was good for that, and this one was good for that, and this is good for that, and that's why I'm thinking about that.
Let's make this the last comment, and then
Just a perception that when we do approach this topic, the perception is that it's a union activity, and it oftentimes takes people who are in administrative responsibility that it's information that they don't want their musicians to get, their dance musicians to, because it's perceived as
all right. Okay, so
should we have a committee?
Maybe Larry's going to say actually the last thing.
Just so everybody knows, the standard for the music position that now existed with NESD standards came about through this group. Now, this has been 10 years maybe since the last time that standard was addressed, and so it may be time to readdress it, but it really went from sort of a vague, yes, you ought to sort of maybe have music, to that one of the major standards now is that the department should have at least one position that is full-time directed at music. You're never going to get to the place, especially with NESD, it cannot dictate what that means. It cannot dictate what that salary will be. It cannot dictate what the standard faculty, because those standards have to apply to every group who wants to be a member from professional studio school through the research universities. So the standards have to be written in such a way that everybody can fit. But I think there's a possibility that if the group is ready to go back into them to put a little bit more information. And about the standards are reviewed every, I would say 3 years, maybe it's 5 years.
That's 3 years.
And they're sort of in the process.
Is there all about this problem?
This current one.
Yeah, I think there is.
Well, let's like distinct the problem. What exactly is the problem?
The problem right now is that we got like 50 more minutes. So, do you want to head up a?
Well, I would love to, I would love to at least talk to other people about it.
Larry should head this thing up. He's been the liaison.
No, I think if we would like to have some sort of ad hoc committee, I hate to use the word, but ad hoc action group. How about that, an action group?
I think if you've all
To investigate this
what it
thing.
is you want to say, I'd be more than happy to take it to the executive board at NESD.
Which means it should-
And I actually would love to have Keith head up this ad hoc action group.
I feel kind of.
Because you have the passion.
Yeah, I feel kind of passionate about it.
So, who would like, and so then maybe this ad hoc action group could keep us all posted of what's going on. And then we can, just see where that leads, or
Couldn't this
some
be a
sort of
moderated
document
listserv
for us.
discussion also?
Pardon?
Could this be a moderated listserv discussion? Sure.
Could be a moderated listserv.
I still got that IBOB committee listserv. I mean, do you want it on the main listserv?
No.
Or you can
Well,
want it on the?
Could be a subset, and also we need to see the survey monkey.
Right.
I mean, maybe that's a good place to
Right,
start.
but I still have that IBOB committee listserv.
Right.
Maybe I could make sure.
So who would like to sort of continue this discussion, keep working on this thing? And would you want to be?
Yeah.
All right, we'll put Keith in charge of this, because then we get more people involved. Who else would like to sort of?
I think it probably should be.
Yeah, I think so very much. This is awesome.
Alan.
Oh, are you writing it down? No, or no?
I'm writing it down. I'm taking notes. Who else would like to join this ad hoc action?
Yeah, we do want to.
I
Suzanne,
need
you
to,
have this
because I-
stuff.
Yeah. Yes, because you do.
Because I need, the survey
It
might
relates-
be.
it relates so close to this.
Anyone else? Right now we have Pete, Dick, Alan, Suzanne, and Larry.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, good. We can call it a committee, but I like action group better. I'm fine.
How about PAC?
PAC.
Political action.
Ah, yeah.
Does that mean you get money?
Take a second.
So you have to talk to John about it.
Now we can get the candidates.
So what do I call it? Committee on standards for employment in the field, or standards on
Just call it committee on standards.
standards? Okay, we don't actually, pardon? All right, standards. Done.
As long as it's not a committee on committees.
Yeah, I've been on such a committee. Believe me, I have actually been on this committee.
So does ours.
All right, well, speaking of committees, I'm going to read the bylaws. The bylaws say we're supposed to have 4 committees. And, oh, actually 5 committees. Believe it or not, there's supposed to be a conference committee. Do we need a conference committee?
Well, you should tell us that, because you had
Mom
mine.
just did it.
My advice would be, just the next time you have a conference, it's like you did, you selected.
Form an ad hoc committee.
That is what the conference.
So I move that we amend the bylaws to strike this conference committee. That we actually have to have.
I don't think
Or
that's
the
good.
conference-
I think that's a bad idea.
The conference committee is defined as.
Opposed assembles a committee when they're ready to
Right.
How do we pick them up, or,
But usually it was somebody or we send them out to
Well, that means, however, that means we have to nominate and elect a,
No.
We don't. It just says we have to have one, so when we next.
when we
time
get
around,
around.
then we'll have one.
That's awful nebulous, though. I mean, do we really want to leave that hanging for whenever, whatever?
Worked
All right,
for
all right.
16 years.
I think it hasn't.
I mean, we don't really need to do any of this, right?
It feels like you should have a conference.
Yeah, that's the way it's been done, but I don't think that's always worked for us.
Can we have a couple minute discussion about another conference?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, actually, before we
You
talk
wanna
about
have-
specific, no, I don't want to put my name in.
You said you did.
I do want to have it,
We did it.
we might, but I don't want to have that discussion. I want to say that it might serve us to have at least one person on the conference committee whose job it is to keep track of developments. You know, are we trying, do we need to take care of a few things this year? Is it really important to have some kind of event, or is it not? Someone's job, you know, could be to read that and communicate with other people so the decision gets made. Just to cut the drift a little bit.
Yeah,
It could
yeah,
drift
exactly.
a year longer than it needs to.
But I think, isn't it possible
That
that
could
the
be the
office of
president.
the president, the vice president could have that
That's
conversation?
Vice president.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're on.
Okay, do we all think it's important to have conferences yearly or every, whenever?
but I think at some regular interval, it's pretty important for us to be, look at it in any serious way. I mean, if NASD met whenever they wanted to,
Yeah, one thing I think is important is if it's regular, whether that be biannually or whatever, we can plan for it in a more assertive and directed way.
Right.
As opposed to just saying, well, maybe we should have a conference this year, which,
Yeah.
you know, then it's like,
Yeah.
if,
I move biannual.
I second the motion.
Oh, you can say aye.
Well, was that an official
I'm
vote?
sorry.
No.
Let's officially vote.
Right, we haven't had discussion already.
Yeah, let's discuss it
I think we could be ready for a conference next year,
every year.
but not always every year. And I think that's why it's, you know, we
How
could
about
be
a
ready
minimum?
if next year could be a good year for a conference or something.
Especially if we're being this ambitious about the journal.
Right, that's
I
right.
hate to wait 2 years before we actually have it.
And being this ambitious about the guild, maybe taking a little political.
I think we can do one every year as long as we open up the fact that some years it would be a small and more informal, like we've done at Ohio State, that kept the thing going, but it wasn't a huge deal. Other times we focus on bigger ones, you know, more effort. So I vote for every year, but just that it's flexible. It's just us.
I don't know that we really have the energy among us to go off every year. And I'm not, I've been around as long as everybody else.
How about if we,
Do we? You do it regularly?
how about if during,
It's going to fall to the people who have universities behind it, okay? So how many of us are there like that?
We'll have universities.
Yeah, my university's behind. Mine's all around.
Or in front, or
It's all around.
So I can't do it any longer. Okay, so 13-ish, 14-ish people. I mean, even those small conferences will work. I mean,
Well, how
and
about
the department kicked in money and.
I move that at every conference, we decide when the next one wants to be.
That it could be
That's
every
great.
year or
Say
every
at
2
least
years.
biannually, giving ourselves the
Put a
option.
minimum there.
How about every year or every 2 years? But that there's a choice, but it's
Right.
like 4 years.
Excuse me, I think that's always been our quote, policy is to have a conference every year if possible. So,
Okay, so let me.
My suggestion is to not change anything. I think our policy has always been, let's have it every year, but if we need a break, we take one. I really don't feel like we need to.
Last minute, last date, I don't know.
Yeah, what happened? Nothing happened.
I know that because
I tried that one in Irvine and.
I'm not sure we want to mandate that we have, I mean, I think we just have this kind of policy that let's try to have one every year, like we've been doing. I mean, I know we've had a hiatus, but John's worked very, I know all of you that have hosted it. It's a lot of work.
Well, we can do a lot.
Yeah, I don't think this bill.
But I'm not saying that, I'm not saying, oh, it's a lot of work, we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying, as you all know, it does require a tremendous amount of work.
So in the bylaws, it says we are supposed to have a conference annually.
So let's just leave it at that. That's what I'm
That's
saying.
what it does.
And we'll just break them when we need to.
We're supposed to.
Yeah.
All right, so as far as another conference is concerned, should we just wait till somebody volunteers to have
No,
one?
I don't, I'm not comfortable with that. I remember that hiatus and it was, destroyed the momentum. I think if we're talking about, I love the things I'm hearing today. I would hate to see that get lost, leave that to chance that everybody gets busy and nobody quite gets back to this. And I think,
So we should set it for next year.
I would love to leave here today knowing when our next,
Yes,
at
and
least
where.
approximately when and where our next meeting would be.
You know what, I want to leave here feeling like this is part of my job now. And that my 45 hours a week or 50 hours a week that I spend being a dance musician, that an hour of that or 2 hours of that has to go to this.
So you want to host the next conference?
I wish I could.
Oh, that's what you're saying.
I wish I could. Yes, wait a minute.
Okay,
Let me answer your question. Yes, I want to,
You want?
but I couldn't.
Is anybody prepared to volunteer to host the conference?
Volunteer.
You're prepared to volunteer to host the conference?
Money where the mouth is.
All right. Florida State.
So the new conference chair is Doug
Corbin.
and now we need a conference committee.
And you can, form that as you start getting closer or.
All the practices.
Something about this time is really good happening.
Is this a good time? Is this a good time for you, ish? October-ish? Is it a good time for everyone? Is this a good time?
And I don't have to do jazz showcase.
Or would we rather February for people in cold
Or
weather?
would you rather do February?
Yeah, it's a better time. This semester for me, personally, is a better time.
This is a good time.
No time is a good time.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of our departments, spring is probably better, but,
You'll have to, yeah.
You have to be early in that semester.
Let your department.
Martin Luther King was the logical
June
one.
works for you,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you have to do, is do it.
I don't mind hearing though, generally.
Martin Luther King weekend?
Yeah, that's.
That was the one that worked.
That part for me now, as far as.
People spring breaks coincide at all?
No.
Well, you'll have to check with your department.
I'm not sure that this is a decision that we could collectively make. Someone will always be disenfranchised.
Let's have Doug check with his department and you can come up with some possible dates.
And are we wanting to do it next year or?
Yes.
Next year?
Yes.
Next fall.
Okay, next fall.
And if, as soon as we can get a date, the earlier we can get that, that's been the problem in the past. And then guys like Steve Rush and Scott always got these concerts sometimes, like, sorry, I can't make it. I don't want to hear that anymore. I want to hear that you
He's here.
plan concerts around.
Okay, all right, next topic of discussion. I'm gonna skip a lot of things here. We're supposed to have a steering committee, but I suggest that we hear, you wanna hear about what the steering committee is supposed to be?
You'll just cut it out.
We've been steering.
All right, we've been steering, all right. We're supposed to have regional directors. We're supposed to have regional directors.
Forget that.
Forget it. Yeah. All right, we're gonna cut to the quick.
we have enough people to form a quorum. Let's just elect some, officers and then be done.
So, yes, since you should be doing the.
There are I'll read you who the officers are.
You can't be doing this.
Officers are, where did they go? President, Vice President, Secretary, and Treasurer. Each elected to a 1-year term with the possibility of no more terms. I'll read what the bylaws say. Each elected to a 1-year term with the possibility of no more than 3 consecutive terms.
That was going to go whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I don't know how long I've been president. I've been president for how many years? 4 years or something?
In I-Adams, this other group, they do an interesting thing, which is they roll the vice president into the presidency. And so in that way, there's planning, and well, I'm not saying we have to adopt this, but what it does is it makes the legacy, go on, and people train along the way, and so it makes for a smoother transition, and people know ahead of time that they're going to be, in a certain spot. So
you're committing to 3 years.
It's like having a presidency elect.
6. Yeah.
At the same time you have a president.
We're sort of moving in that direction a little because.
What, 3 year?
It would be a next logical choice, and she's talking about a couple of years doing a conference down there. So that could work very nicely as it is now.
She's the vice president.
She's the vice president, and the treasurer is Larry. So, and that's really all we got, right?
Yes.
President, Vice President, Secretary.
And,
We don't have a secretary.
well, we know.
And historian.
Get it right.
Forget those.
Forget
Cut those
that.
out.
Forget that.
Those are gone.
But considering what's happened to us as a country, I think we should also write in that it's possible that we should, that there's some way of getting out of this.
Oh, you mean an electoral college?
Well, the vice president always becoming the president or whatever.
Yeah, it's not.
I think there should be some way of us.
Well,
as
is this important? I mean, we have bylaws. Is it important to follow the bylaws?
I think we can do what we want.
Wow. So, moving ahead on this, I'd like to make a recommendation that we.
We got to solve this in 5 minutes or less.
So we need to continue with the people who are doing it right now for a little longer until Suzanne will be ready to take over, right, ascend to the throne. So,
The throne?
Okay, so I recommend.
Larry has something to say.
Yes?
Go ahead, and I'll say what you're saying.
Okay, so these same people will do this for the next 2 years. That's my recommendation. Should we, is there a discussion?
Yes.
Okay, so then we want to go by, I recommend that we go, that we accept this.
No. This has to be a real discussion. This is not a motion. We really have to decide.
I don't even understand this discussion.
Yeah, this is like, I don't want Bill to be running roughshod over this.
I really rush out of you.
Does that needs tenure?
What?
Does anybody need tenure?
Yeah, who needs tenure?
Because that's one of the reasons.
But I definitely want to hear Larry.
The other thing I was going to say is that the bylaws exist for one reason only, and that is to make us eligible for our 501c3.
Oh, so I
And the way,
lead the way.
because I wrote them, okay? And the way they're written is so that we qualify.
Okay.
So all that stuff in there,
It's
we
just-
don't actually have to pay any attention to whatsoever, as long as we have a functioning organization, so that every year when the Commonwealth of Virginia asks us to renew our 501c3, I can say to them, yes, the officers are boom, boom, and boom. You
Okay.
have to have at least 3 names on your phone. They don't care if you're in for life, they don't care. But legally, we've got to have something in it.
Okay. All right. So I'll just close this document here.
Okay, what's the discussion?
Well, the discussion is that there are some decisions based on that comment that need to be done in a real, procedural, Robert's rules kind of thing, and this is one of them, electing our officers. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So let's do it.
It's a procedural kind of thing.
Let's do it. Thank you.
So, and I think it's also not fair to the officers, even if they indicate, I mean, to take that burden for just on a say-so. And I think technically the bylaw exists for that, but I think we need them also for other reasons as an organization if we're going to get beyond certain things. So,
And it's important too to rotate officers. So
I
that
think so.
It's a lot of work.
I mean, all due respect, your
Well, not only just a lot of work, but
it
that
could
we
be
get
great
more
work,
people.
Well, it might turn out that way anyway, but we really should follow.
And do you really mind if we?
I'd be happy to do one more year.
Okay, I would like to propose that we open the nominations from the floor for the office of president.
Very good.
Second.
Okay, since the president cannot preside over his.
Right, somebody else has to say it, that's you.
Are there any other nominations?
And a third, do we hear any other nominations?
For president?
Can I hear a call for the close of nominations?
I call the question.
I second it.
All right, we have nominated John Pinches for president term for however long.
For 1 year.
One
year is what it's.
All members in favor, please signify.
Aye.
Okay, motion is carried. Now, Mr. President, you can carry on with the rest of the elections.
You have to say those words.
Vice President.
Did you close your eyes during the
Take your head off.
Larry, you're vice. You have to.
All right, so I now open the nominations for the office of Vice President.
I nominate Suzanne.
We have nominated Suzanne Noss. Do I hear a second? Somebody said something, right? Okay.
I did. I second it.
Further nominations for the office of Vice President? Do I hear one? Close the nominations.
I call the question.
All those in favor of
Aye.
Dr. Suzanne Noss being elected to the position of Vice President? Wow.
And now you can't be treasurer.
I can't be treasurer. But let me say this about the treasurer. One reason it's stayed in one spot for so long is that I'm our legal address, and we just haven't changed it much because it's not a very demanding job.
Yes,
So
checkbook.
when we change it, we have to change the bank and all that. I'm not saying that I need to do it. That's sort of why it's. I'll follow that.
So I'm nominating Larry to continue.
Second.
Second.
Call for close. I call for the close.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
Motion carried.
I'm abstaining. And I'm voting.
And Mr. President, I would like at this point to suggest that we end the election process knowing that we have not filled all positions, but we don't see a need for all positions to be filled at this point, and that we could indeed convene the membership through email if we need to further elect personages.
I second the motion.
Okay, I move that we adjourn this meeting of the International Guild of Musicians of Dance, take a break, and then hear your, are you next on the schedule? Who's next on the schedule?
Excuse me, sir.
All right, that motion was defeated. All right, oh, you're first. Okay, right.
John, can you talk a little bit about how we're going to handle this? Because I see us all exhausted and hungry when I start to speak. Just how are we going to time in the morning?
We should talk at the same time.
Ooh.
Let's do
It's maybe difficult, I mean, you were scheduled for an hour each, is that correct?
No, he's scheduled for 45 minutes.
And you were scheduled for an hour? You need an hour, that's my question, is how you
Lunch is at 12:30. I suggest that we take a 5-minute break. And that Steve goes next, and that,
I could do mine later in the somebody could go.
I think we don't mind at all moving ours back.
Or we could, Keith, we could also do ours at the same time as somebody else's.
Yeah, there is, well.
Right.
okay, I move that we take the Ansonic workshop down to 1 hour instead of an hour and a half.
Thank you, yes.
Okay, so we can shorten that.
There you go.
We'll take a break now. We'll do Steve till. We'll do Steve.
I'm confused. So many levels, I'm so confused.
Okay, how about if we do this?
Steve,
What if
are
are you ready to go in 5 minutes? Can you go?
Yeah, you want to move Steve and have me go?
Have you go first?
I think I need to focus on the computer a little bit, I think we're okay.
Yeah.
5 to 7 minutes, whatever.
Take enough of a break so.
All right, let's take a 10-minute break. Then we will. Not yet. This is like class is gonna be over. All the kids are playing. All right, so we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll come back here, and then Andy will talk, and then we'll take a little break, and Steve will talk, and then we'll have lunch and the hands, something like that. And then we'll do a 1-hour Ansonic thing.
Is lunch here?
Yeah, lunch is just like yesterday. Okay, so we're breaking. Oh, we have to do that too. You got it. I want to.